Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising. As we go into the home stretch between now and December 14th, when we convene in Washington, D.C. at the Omnishorum Hotel to inaugurate the State of the World Forum, which we're convening between 2025 and 2030, to ponder the major issues confronting our human family at this time. We're in an extraordinary moment when simultaneously we're teetering on the brink of self-destruction because we've unleashed exponential climate change and we're experiencing instability at every level of human affairs. The human race is quite literally out of control. And simultaneously, we have unleashed AI, and the US government is telling us that the ETs are here and that there's evidence of sustained contact and communication. If you put all those data points together, you have a tumultuous reality in the face of which virtually none of us have the capacity to connect all the dots. It's an extraordinary thing. 20, 30 years ago, we all thought we were in a world that we understood. And now human activity and human technology has spun quite literally beyond our control. And we're in a momentum now within the context of which both destruction and redemption are intertwined together such that nothing less than a new paradigm for human identity and human interactivity with the larger web of life will suffice to deliver us quite literally from ourselves. And that's what the State of the World Forum is being convened to grapple with. How do we integrate runaway climate change, instability at every level of human affairs, exponential AI, and the reality of cosmic intelligences here on Earth? How do we understand these four intelligences that are impinging on us now? Human intelligence, which we can't control, nature intelligence, artificial intelligence, cosmic intelligence. This is a moment for all of us, not only to live large, but to think large and to understand that we have to expand our categories of cognition in ways that the human race has never been challenged to do in our entire history. And that's the honor that all of us have in this moment. That's the challenge that all of us, ready or not, must take up, knowing that as our crises deepen, our opportunities grow. And so that's what Humanity Rising has been convened to contemplate week by week. And as we go into the final home stretch of the State of the World Forum, first of all, I just want to invite everyone to be there. You need to be at the State of the World Forum, either in person or online, because this is going to be a conversation of a lifetime. And so each week between now and the forum, now in the middle of December, we're going to have one of the speakers and one of the participants who's going to grace us in that dialogue that we're going to have together on Humanity Rising to just explain bits and pieces of what they're bringing to this extraordinarily complex and layered conversation. So today I'm delighted to bring back on Humanity Rising Susan Manewich, who you all are familiar with. She's been a pioneer. She's an ET contactee at one level personally. She has extensive professional experience in teaching at Harvard and MIT and other major universities about emotional intelligence, and has recently been exploring the depths of plasma intelligence. And she's doing a PhD on the intelligence of the sun and how that intelligence impacts human thought and emotions and behavior. She's also going to be teaching a course starting next month in our extraterrestrial studies program on the plasma intelligence and the cosmic dimension of what we humans now have to understand and align ourselves with as we come to that point in our evolutionary development when we have to humble ourselves in the realization that we're no longer the apex species. And we need to transition from this delusional sense we've had for a very long time that human supremacy is the end of the matter. And we need to be embracing the sacred reciprocity as we humans take our place in an important but relatively relational niche in the larger scheme of things. So that's our program today. Susan, welcome onto Humanity Rising. And we're going to just dialogue, and then Susan will join the after chat for a bit at the end of our program. But Susan, let's just begin by sharing with us some of the research that you've been doing and how your experience as a contactee has influenced your extraordinarily expansive notion of what intelligence is in our universe at this time.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jim, and thank you to the community here, all of you, those behind the scenes, Stan, Georg, and everybody that I've spoken to. You have a super community. I just want to come and say that first. Obviously, I'm not here every day, but I will be at least 4 times a month next month teaching the course, and super crazy blessed to be at the State of the World Forum. I was really grateful to receive the invitation, and just all of my body reacted with the yay. This is perfect, and this is where we're supposed to be. So I just want to thank you and thank the community, because I hear from several people in the community, and you're always so polite and so informed and so educated. And wow is all I can say. So thank you. And
Thank you.
yeah, Jim, so let's talk about it. You framed it so well. I think probably the best way to start off would be, by the way, I didn't teach at MIT. That was the one college that I didn't. So you said MIT, but Harvard Business School, University of Chicago Business. I mean, there's a whole list of litany of them. And I taught on emotional intelligence there and leadership. So I just want to share that with everybody. So that's really what I was teaching. I was teaching the teachers at the time. And back then we didn't take selfies of when we were like doing things like that, but I don't even have any pictures to show anybody. I just have some research articles and that's about it. But yes, so that was something that I did. So I just want to talk a little bit. You asked about the research, but I want to share first and foremost. And by the way, I didn't do a presentation today. You've seen two of my presentations previously, and I felt like it was a bit of a freestyle today in terms of having a free flow conversation. That just felt like the right thing to do, feeling into how to prepare for this today. So, yeah, I'm a lifetime contactee. And also, for those of you who remember my story, I do remember my incarnation. And my first memory was not, just going into my mother's womb. It was with the source. And yes, it was out in the cosmos. And that to me, you can call it the primary sun, the ultimate sun, the ultimate, source of light, but that's truly what I remember. And to me, that also has this sentience to it. And we have our local sun, our local star that gives us energy, that gives us life on the planet, that is a connector to source as well. I mean, it's all a connection. I think we know that. I seem to be particularly fused with the sun, and the intelligence that comes from that. And, did I immediately know that? No. But over a short amount of time, and in these last several decades, it became really clear to me, oh, this is part of what I was connected to prior to incarnating. And this isn't just about me, yay. This is about us as a collective, and that we're moving towards this. And I want to make another relationship here that is really important to the contact experience. So I think for those who do know my story, and if you don't, none of my contact has been scary, odd, or strange or weird with beings, interdimensional beings. And yes, it's been physical. It's been physical that's moved towards, we can call it plasma, to this fourth state of matter, because I have experienced that as a young person. I've experienced that. Thank you, Shannon. No, not weird at all. Yay. I'll say another yay to that. And it's something in which that as the sun and the activity geomagnetically has been shifting over these last several years, and our body's response to it, I actually said to myself, I said, this feels a lot like it did when I was a kid, and I would have these
Mm.
encounters with these beings. And I said, oh, this is the state of readiness, that we're in the process. Our bodies, our emotional system, our central nervous system is shifting and changing for this preparation. And that was the call of duty to then help to um, give people a better way to make sense of this. And so, this is not just on the spiritual level, this is actually on a physical level as well. And so it's taking the work of emotional intelligence, because like I said, that's what I had done that for years and specialized in that. And really fusing that with what I know about plasma intelligence. And since I had been researching this, as so you do it as an experiencer, experiencing this, but then I have this knowledge about emotional intelligence. And I said, well, this is not for nothing. We have to help people make sense of what this is in order to be able to more fully integrate it. If you just take the application of emotional intelligence, which is the capacity to effectively identify your emotions, to effectively use emotions, to understand where these emotions come from, and to help regulate ourselves for an effective outcome for us, but also for other people, the people that may be around us. We take that and we apply that, we fuse that with plasma intelligence. And I think that thing that is a way to make sense of this and to use it effectively, as opposed to, oh my God, I just had this experience. It's great that you've had X, Y, or Z, but how do we move that? How do we ground it? How do we apply it? And to also just make sense of it, not just for self, but for others. And so that's where that came from. And yes, I'm pursuing the PhD. I felt it was important to formalize it. The reason being isn't just to get the PhD. It was from an accountability standpoint to actually be held accountable for what I say and do. We live in a
Mhm.
day and age where that doesn't exist much.
PhD will do that.
Yeah, yeah. People are looking at your stuff and they're going, huh, this is wrong. And did you think of this? And it's like, no. So it was saying, yes, I want the accountability for, and I'm a Virgo, so I like being accurate. There's a bit of that in there. But I just think it's important to do that because we do live in a day and age where you can throw a camera on yourself, which I'm not too keen about, and you can say whatever you want to say, and it can whip people up into a frenzy. And I felt a call of duty
Exactly.
to do it in a grounded way that was practical. And that doesn't mean, by the way, that there's not information that's floating around out there that's not helpful or beneficial. But for me, I've got a call of duty that, as I shared, I think in one of the, and Jim, I'll let you ask me a question in a second. Um, when I was incarnating in, I remember leaving Source and coming to Earth, and I heard your job is to understand how they live on this planet. And, that's taken on tons of different learnings and tons of different ways. But in this specific application, sharing with you today is, people's central nervous systems are really jacked up. They're really charged these days. This little phone, that we have, sometimes we see things on it, right? When we're scrolling through social media or what have you, and it's horrific, some of the stuff that comes through your phone, and before you know it, you're having an emotional response that you didn't anticipate or that you didn't think that you were going to allow, you know, yourself to see your experience. So we're living in times that our central nervous system can be really jacked right now. And I felt it was important to, really bring that grounded perspective. Let's get emotional, what we should be emotional about, because emotion is an evolutionary adaptive ability as well. Evolution and emotion, those two go hand in hand. And if we're burning out our central nervous systems by, one threat or the other, then we don't necessarily know what to pay attention to. And I feel like one of the ways through this shift right now to minimize noise is to, and I say this every day, is just remember you're designed to be attuned to the earth and cosmos. And that's the primary tuning fork right there. So there's so much more I can say, but I think that's probably a pretty good summary, I think.
It is indeed. So let's unpack a few things. First of all, I think it would be helpful for people to understand a little bit more about your origin and your entry into this incarnation, uh, because it is something that is emerging, and we've discussed a number of times on Humanity Rising that there's a growing group of people like you who are who can remember being conscious before they were in their mother's womb, and that they engaged in some kind of intention to come into the earth at this time with a particular mission, as you have. So I'd like to just unpack that for a moment because if I understand your story and the thrust of what you're saying, even in your introduction, that there's a certain transformation, a certain morphing of the human being that's taking place right now in some kind of deep cosmic preparation for a higher order awareness of who we human beings are and the potential that we carry within ourselves, and that what Barbara Lamb calls walk-ins. In some ways, you're kind of a walk-in into our reality to help facilitate that. So I'd like to have you just say a little bit more about how you experience this coming into this incarnation and the purpose for which you've done so.
It's such a great question. And thank you. I'm humbled by your question. And I see that some people have had similar
Mm,
experiences. It's
mm.
great. It used to feel pretty lonely thinking like, I was an odd person to remember it. It's weird because you don't feel like you're special. You just feel like you're odd with it, and you try to normalize yourself. So the fact that we've got others here now that remember that, which is fabulous. It just feels strengthening. So yeah, and what I would say is this that without getting into all the details of what I remember, the primary like I remember literally coming alive, like coming to life. Like I already was. I was like hanging out literally. It felt like I was hanging out near source. I felt like I was a star, not not the Hollywood star, just a star hanging out. And I was connected to this other celestial object, being, whatever you want to call it. And this activation that occurred in this activation, it was nothing other than absolute pure joy and excitement. And it was to be a part of, serving is not the right word, to be a part of this journey with the creator and this role with the creator. And that was just massive excitement. And I didn't remember anything. I didn't know Earth at that point, like in my consciousness. I just was with Source, ready to rock and roll to do what I needed to do with a lot of energy to do it. And that's truly what it was. And then the part that is probably really important is I remember seeing these golden beings, these golden, I call them like a
Wow.
golden pod of beings. And they look like, if you were to imagine like a plasma being that's just full of golden radiating light that is in like a humanoid type of form. Uh, it doesn't have hair or anything, like, just imagine like a plasma being, golden light. And it it I was watching this, like it was like the next scene that I remember that unfolded. Golden being like was kneeling before source, and it was
Wow.
getting its instruction from source, not in verbal but in energy form.
Hmm.
And I knew that I was connected to these different beings, right? Like, so I came into this incarnation with that. I'm going to make a silly analogy. It's like reading the energy of source of what needs to happen on Earth and human beings to help. It's like trying to land a 747 in like a massive windstorm. And Earth is like, you know, the 747 and the windstorm is like, this galactic space that we're going through right now, this shift in change on the planet. So it's help we're people like us, me, I think we're just helping to stabilize. It seems like we're trying to do something, this so forward thinking, forward motion,
Hmm.
but we're actually helping to stabilize the planet and people in order to best go through this shift. And absolutely, it is with the heart. Somebody just wrote with the heart, and it is with that. So yes, there's so much more I can say on that, but I do also, I didn't remember this at the time when I was incarnating in, but I had past life memory recall come in. Um, it was started to come in when I was 19, heavily. I'm sorry, let me back up. It came in my teens, and then 19, and then by 30, I had multiple past lives that I remembered, and
Wow.
ironically, yeah, I mean, multiple. And ironically, I've always been here during the planetary shifts when the planet is shifting. I'm like I make a joke like I'm kind of straddling the old world and the new world almost each time. And it's, yeah, so that.
Yeah.
And yeah, and
You're
Um,
making me feel very boring, Susan. I
come on.
I can't remember any of that.
But look what you do. Look what you come on. I don't think anybody in your audience would say you're boring. I just remember. And at the same time, I
Yeah,
get to
yeah,
experience
yeah. I wish I
people
could.
like you that are super dynamic and that, just know you're here to do what you're here to do. So,
Yeah,
it's all of us pieces that make it rock and roll.
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, we're opposite in that sense because I'm very intuitive, like you say, but no, the cosmos hasn't given me any additional information.
It's coming. Oh,
But
you're
let me
doing
ask
great.
you, yeah, I wanted to probe this because I want to now turn to what you're bringing through with this course because your mission really has been to incarnate at this time to help facilitate the awareness that we humans need to um, encompass in
Mhm.
order to maximize the opportunities that are before us for further refinement of consciousness and evolution.
Mhm.
So, why don't we talk about your course and uh, take some time to really define plasma intelligence? People have a sense of emotional intelligence, but define plasma intelligence and then lay out what you're going to be covering in this course because this is really an important course. We
Mhm.
all need to know what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, very good. Because yeah, so with plasma intelligence, the I would define it as this. I mean, it really is people have probably heard this. It's the fourth state of matter. I do believe that. And yes, we can see it, and how we can see it is their mind's eye. So it's responsive, self-organizing field that exhibits intelligence and even has lifelike properties. And so let me give you just a hardcore example of that. So, and I use myself as a barometer. I kind of make a joke. I'm like an early adopter to things to then work through it to then, oh, here, let's, show other people this and expose, and then your abilities can kick in. So like, for example, I know a lot of people have probably heard about, well, the sun is going to take out the earth, and the sun is going to have these big solar flares, going to take out life as we know it. So that was, kind of like the growing consensus for quite some time, I think amongst lots of people. And until we realized, wait a second here, this is actually changing us. This is actually helping us to develop. This is actually giving us, I'm intuitive when the sun is doing certain things. Well, why is that? Why are certain things coming in? And one of the things that I noticed is that um, when the sun would flare, I wouldn't just feel it, I could see it,
Wow.
not looking at it, but I could see it. I would close my eyes and I would see it. And I would see that plasma intelligence. I'd see that plasma. And then I began to work with it in real time. And I believe that that is something for those people who want to be able to have this aligned connection that we can. And I think that that's just really the start of it, because we're not just these hapless recipients of what the sun does.
Mhm.
We're here on Earth in this, earthly body, because it really is an earthly body, and yet we have this. I do believe as well that we have a plasma body. It's like the golden beings of light, like I think we have a plasma body as well. Now, how it's charged, to what degree, the
Is the
quality,
plasma body our etheric body?
I think so. I do think so. And yeah, I believe that. And I know that there's some other researchers and scientists that would say that as well. But that's my sense. And I know people talk about these various different bodies, at these different subtler levels. I'm sure that exists, but for the sake of simplicity, for this conversation, I would say, yeah, that's what I believe, we're talking about here at this moment. And that's what I believe, and I'm being super open to you and to your audience right now. That's what I believe, my body interacted with the beings.
Mm.
And my physical body didn't entirely go away. It just changed phases, in that shared space with the beings. It wasn't just me doing this. There was a shared space with the beings. There was a shared space with the ship, and that created this open engagement. That created this I'll call it a shared plasma state space that allowed the space between the spaces to open up to have this engagement. And so it's not just here's my physical body, there's a ship. I believe that we're shifting and we're moving towards
And you're saying
that
that
higher
this
vibration.
that the sun's energy, the sun vibrations is really interacting with our plasma body, our sort of etheric body. And then that then generates the particular thoughts, emotions, visions, ideas, intuitions that we experience, that what we think and feel and intuit isn't coming just out of us. It's coming out of the relationship between us and the sun,
Yes.
and probably other planets and star systems and so forth and so on, because that's the
Yeah.
basis of
Yes.
everything's interconnected. Is that
Yes.
what you're basically
Absolutely.
saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you've got, there's also the self-organizing principle. So it's kind of like this. So when the sun is active and we are experiencing it, it's really up to us to determine what the quality of that experience is. So if we're in if we're in a, I don't want to use the word negative state because there's, please forgive me, but there's so much over reliance on the positivity, the positivity, the positivity. Sometimes the sun is also, charging us to look at some of these negative emotions and look at some of these things that need to come up to be, healed, relieved, what have you. But being able to, even get to, I would say, some of these higher level experiences with the sun, it is important to try to be present with it and to try to be mindful of it, to allow the energy to come in, for us to be
Hmm.
able to work consciously with it. And I think that's really one of the goals, that we're not this hapless participant in this process, or this hapless recipient in this process. Every part of my being says we are designed to be present and designed to be aligned and designed to be connected with these forces, and that's how we work to move through. But there is an intelligence to this, and there's something that is impacting us. And I look at it this way: it's an activator. The sun really is the
Exactly.
activator,
Exactly.
right? And so, we may have, and this goes back to the Beyond UFOs research that I've talked about and will continue to talk about, because it's still great research. That's 5,000 people, about 5,000 people that were researched, that were contactees and asked about, Earth changes and what's going to happen and whatnot. And most of them would say the same thing. They'd say, I'll know what to do when I need to do it. I don't know exactly when I'm supposed to do it. I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to do, but I'll know what I need to do and when I need to do it. Well, what do you think the activator of that would be? There's, I mean, the primary activator is going to be the sun, because that is it's that life giver. It's that, impulse, the impetus for that energy. And, it's almost like we've got um, this latent information that's inside of us,
Hmm.
this intuition, even. It may not be fully conscious, it may not be fully activated on, but the sun could really be the activator of that. It really seems to be what I'm seeing now, because that research was published in 2018. The research started around like what, 2013 to like 2017. And now with what we're seeing, people are much more active than they were previously, and paying more attention to things like the sun, human resonance and things like that. So, we seem to now have this greater relationship. I hope I answered your question.
Well, yeah, yes, and I'd like to uh, refine it just at the level of the sun cycle, because
Mhm.
the research, as I understand it, is that as the sun's flares intensify over this 11-year cycle, and 2025 is the apogee of the sun flares, both aggressiveness and creativity are enhanced.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then at
Yeah.
the lower end of the cycle, when it begins to reduce its intensity, human creativity and aggressiveness kind of wanes.
Hmm.
So at the nadir point of the sun cycle, as I understand it, which would have been around 2020,
Hmm. Hmm.
that's when you get things like COVID. That's when you get things like plagues.
Hmm.
And then it moves up. So, Trump's performance at the UN, which was an absolute disgrace a couple of days ago, is an
Hmm.
example of how sun energy kind of
Hmm.
freaks a guy out right on the world stage. But there's also lots of creativity. In my mind, it's synchronistic that the State of the World Forum, which is bringing in this multi-intelligence revolution, is happening in 2025
Right. Yeah. So
because
it's,
this kind of creativity is also part of the great pleroma. And so
yes.
we're we're tracking even unconsciously
Yeah.
what it is that the sun rhythms are kind of ordaining in a way as an activator of these energies in the
Yes.
human psyche.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Right on target. And I would say that just a couple of things to add on to that.
Yeah,
It's almost like a bit of a crazy energy, right? Like what
yeah,
the height is
yeah.
it's like crazy creativity and yes, crazy aggressiveness, um uh chaos, right? So we've got a lot of that. And I think we saw that it does seem to be that we're just in the come down. So there's a little debate, and I'm crazy researcher as well, and there's a debate is if 2024 was the height of the solar activity or if it's 2025. So
Oh,
I
yeah, I
would
don't
just
know.
simply say this.
But we're at
Yeah,
the
no, it's okay.
apogee
But I
apogee
also
point. Yeah.
yes. Yes. And that allows for kind of like all the energy that was moving, all the stuff that was happening and going on to now begin to make more sense of it if you are not, uh, if you're mindful of it. And like what you're saying, and then whatever happened with Trump that day, I didn't entirely see what he did. But at the same time, yeah, if there's an energy that's coming, let me give you, for example, um, we do seem to be more greatly connected to these influences through these cosmological and I don't want to just say the sun because I mean this last lunar eclipse was like it was a butt kicker
Yeah.
for a lot of people. I mean, we're sandwiched between this lunar eclipse and the solar eclipse, partial solar eclipse between the 7th of September and the 21st. And, there's a lot of stuff that happened and went on. So we don't want to exclude, the moon here and what it's doing and the sun and the moon. But at the same point, we seem to have greater connectivity. We haven't had an X class flare in quite some time. I don't know the last time that we had one. We just haven't had it in quite some time, a couple of months. And we're still having these M class flares, and we haven't had an M class, I think, the last 48 hours. Prior to that, we had one, but that's felt, right? So here's this kind of
Now,
moderate.
just so I know, or the audience, an M class flare means a big flare, basically.
Well, there's C, okay, there's B, C, M, and X. And what we've been hearing about for the last couple of years is those X class flares because they're the ones that really produce those auroras that we get, that we've saw in 2024 and earlier, I think we had earlier 2025 that came in as well. So those are the big ones. So the big one is the X class, and we haven't had an X class flare in the last couple of months. But the M class, which is I consider it moderate, uh, is one that we had like 48 hours ago, and it's not big, but it's felt. Like people can feel it, and sometimes when the field has kind of not been so active, when the sun pops off even like a moderate flare, so M class would be considered moderate. When it pops off that, people are feeling it. And
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the big thing that's going on is there's greater connectivity. And I asked an individual who specializes in this, and I said, and he's a scientist and professor, and working with him on my PhD, and I said, "What do you think is going on? I have my ideas, but what do you think is going on?" And his answer was fascinating, and I'll tell you what he said. He said, "I think people are really experiencing their higher self more. And that is what is creating this greater connectivity." And so, he looks at it both ways. It's not just, again, what's happening cosmologically, but it's
Mhm.
how we're
Mhm.
responding and
Yeah.
how we are interacting with with each other, with the field. Obviously, the heart is critical and important as well. So, you don't need to have these big poppers of flares right now
Yeah.
in order to have this greater connectivity.
Well, I want to probe this because you're so deeply immersed in this field, and I want to go back to Trump for a moment because I want to emphasize the relationship between our individual psyche and what's happening cosmologically. So you have all these sun flares, you've got all the photons, you've got all the stuff that the rays that are coming in at a billions a second and all of that. When I saw that, and Trump is a personality of chaos, right? So when I saw that his escalator broke, the teleprompter broke, then the microphone malfunctioned and people couldn't hear him. He kind of went out of control on the stage and blamed the UN and when I was experiencing that, I said to myself, boy, he's really refracting some intense sun energy, but it's through his chaotic psyche. Now,
Mhm.
on the other hand, you have somebody like Jimmy Kimmel,
Mhm.
right? That so there's chaos, but the way Kimmel came through that and his speech, his monologue when he came back on about the same time that Trump was having his experience was clear, was conscious, was compassionate, and was really, really elevated. So
Hmm.
what I wanted to probe with you is this interactivity between cosmic intelligence and the individual psyche of us humans as we're moving through this cosmic soup. We're all refracting it in different ways. Our plasma is interacting in very unique ways, which means, and this is the point of your course, we've got to understand that, and we have to work on ourselves to make sure that we're refracting the sun's energy in a way that is conducive to the elevation of consciousness that your friend was telling you is now possible.
Right, exactly. And that's
So
why,
expand on that.
well, I love it. I love the example, and thank you because it's perfect. That's why emotional intelligence is critical. All right.
Yes, yes,
Yeah. It's why it doesn't, I thought, oh, we'll leave an emotional intelligence behind, right? We're going to this consciousness research and plasma bodies. No, the emotional piece, the emotional body is, legitimately is all related, right? Like it's going to be very challenging to act intelligently in whatever way we define intelligence if the emotional body is being reactionary.
exactly,
And that's
exactly.
the key, because these energies for sure. When you look up even all of the physiological research, or most of the physiological research on like geomagnetic activity, solar activity, most of it's in the negative. And I presented on that, I don't know, what, in February or something, on here. But we have the capacity to regulate our emotional state. And if we can regulate our emotional state, we stand a better chance of allowing that plasma intelligence to come into play to interact with the emotional state, or to, I don't want to say to not have emotion, because we want to have emotion, because that forms our moral impulses as well. So, that's why I'm not a big fan of, being overly positive with certain things, because sometimes those negative emotions are there as a way to give us
Yes,
information. right? Oppose something that doesn't feel so right, within ourselves to grow and evolve, right? So the emotional piece, the intelligence piece is really critical to then allow for this greater sensitivity of energy to come into play. And I'm going to relate it back if I can, without losing your question to answer it properly. So, contactees that have interacted with legitimate light chips beings, it's a super high charge of energy. Okay. Being able to handle that charge of energy is
Hmm.
really, really, really um, I don't know how much is talked about that on here. I'm not sure. So bear with me if I'm talking out of term.
No.
But it's a I've talked a lot of my friends are contactees and we've talked about there's a really high charge of energy that comes in. And when I was a kid, I remember my physical body, it was like the cells of my body, each of them were activating, they were magnetically charged, and they were working and they were spinning, and it was a buzz beyond a buzz. And and when you interact with these beings, there's a super high charge of energy
Hmm.
that occurs and takes place, and without us getting knocked out, falling asleep, or shutting down, to stay conscious with the experience. I think that this is what we're talking about here. We're talking about the combination of the emotional body and being able to have ourselves consciously drive that, as opposed to being reactionary to it without thinking of other people, without causing ourselves to have our central nervous system blown out, right, or blown out of proportion. So we have to figure out how to handle these higher charges
Hmm. Hmm.
that are happening, the greater connectivity that's happening. And I do think that this last solar cycle that we just went through, this apex of it, um, created that capacity within ourselves. And now we're at a stage where we're learning how to work with it in order to have them meet each other in a way that doesn't divide and separate. I hope that makes sense,
Mm.
because
Mm.
this is where it is related to the UFO piece, the ET piece, the higher vibrational charge piece, and we can use it from an evolutionary adaptive standpoint, or we can be reactionary from a central nervous standpoint. One is going to lead us to greater pastures, and the other is probably going to burn us out.
Yes. Yes.
So, the example that you gave is a great example of two people that used those energies likely differently. And of course, it depends on, whatever else they had going on, for sure. And
Right. Right.
I
Right.
think their support system around them too.
Yeah. Well, let's then take it to the next level. So, given the fact that we are in some ways arbiters of how we are going to experience and refract these energies, the critical thing is how do we prepare ourselves to absorb the energies and transmute them to higher consciousness and greater intention uh, uh, of service, shall we say, to the higher good. So in your course, you describe this phenomenon, and you also sort of describe what we can do to make sure that we're on the coherent side as opposed to the chaos side.
Yeah.
Uh, so talk to us a little bit about in your own personal journey, what practices have you found to be conducive to the kind of refinement we need to ensure that as we go through this cosmic experience, we're coming out at a higher level rather than a more reactive level?
Okay, great question. Well, I would say this. It's also knowing what is happening. I think those pieces are important, like knowing what's happening. Is the sun flaring? Is it not? Is there a coronal hole stream? Is there high speed wind? Is there So I'll go through that with people so they can actually begin to match these things up. Like I shared previously, one of the things that it broke my heart to see people that would experience these energies and think there's something wrong with them. I mean, it was sad, and I had to do a lot of, because you start with, for me, I start with friends and family. That's where I go first, is friends and family. Who needs the most help? Who needs the most support? Who feels like, because sometimes people feel like they're losing it, and they feel like, because sometimes, what happens with the physical body, sometimes the physical body is having a real challenge keeping up with these energies. And would it sometimes can signal the fact that, um, what I saw people doing is they would think about, well, so and so had this issue in my family, so therefore I have it, some type of disease, some type of early death, or what have you. So there was typically, honestly, like 99% of the time, this negative interpretation of what was going on, because they would get heart palpitations out of nowhere, seemed out of nowhere, they get anxiety out of nowhere. And it would just click into this negative thought process. So for them to realize, hey, guess what? You and everybody I talked to today, like 20 people, all felt the same thing. Yeah.
Mm.
So to realize you're not alone in this, to get out of the, honestly, it's idiosyncratic thinking, to get out of the idiosyncratic.
We shouldn't over personalize it.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Perfect. I love that. Yeah. Not over personalize it, because you and like, and it doesn't matter what age, sometimes you get a 5-year-old and you've got an 85-year-old that, is having a similar reaction. Um, and for women, I'm of age that people would say, well, that's just those changes, And it's like, hey,
Are
guess
you
what?
having hot flashes, dear?
I know, and you're like, that's not it. So, yeah, so, it was transcending age. It was
Exactly, exactly.
transcending gender, even. And so having people realize that there is a legitimate, and you don't want to like, I'm not a forcer, just to share this. That's why I'm very careful to not go, oh, well, the Schumann did this, so therefore that, or the solar. No, you got to like get to the level of specific and accuracy if you really want to know and understand what's going on. So, being able to really know and what's going on, these reactions that you are having, these experiences that you are having, is this tied to something with the space weather effects? Is it tied to something that is going on in the collective? And that is helpful to then get out of this idiosyncratic, self-focused thinking, and to get into the stream of life with other people, and work to move through this, and figure out how it's guiding you. And so, you asked a practical question. Another practical answer is, there's certain things that you want to do when these energies are happening, and there's certain things you don't want to do. For example, if somebody does have a heart issue, do not go out there and start running and start exercising. That may seem counterintuitive, but we know that there's a strain on the heart when you get higher level geomagnetic activity. So, certain
Mm.
things that you want to do, and there's certain things you don't want to do, physically, physiologically, emotionally. And there's certain days that you just want to rest. You just want to allow yourself to rest. I don't know about anybody on here, but I'll say this. Are there days that you feel like you don't even have a brain cell to give to anything? Yeah, a moment that you don't have a brain cell to give to anything. You know what that means? Don't give them away.
Right.
Let them be. Let them be at that moment, because it's it's I've been pregnant, I've had a baby, and that feeling of, oh my God, you're birthing something, you're not doing much, like walking or exercising or whatever, and you're just exhausted. And you kind of think about it this way. Well, rebirth is kind of an exhausting process, and you want to allow yourself to rest when you feel that. So those are some of, super basic things, but we'll get into a lot more in depth on the course in regards to what to do. I'm a big advocate for practical things, not just the big out there stuff, but I love that. But at the sense, we're practical, and this human heart. And I will share one other thing with you. Um, Rudolf Steiner, and this is part of my PhD process. Rudolf Steiner said that, I'm paraphrasing him horribly, that he thought maybe one day the heart would become a voluntary muscle. Think about that.
Mm.
Is this part of what we may be looking at with what the beings, have been sharing and guiding us? That, we don't just drop this physical body. Maybe we take our physical body with us, but maybe it is adapting, maybe it is adjusting. And maybe that's why the consciousness part, the emotional intelligence, the calmness, the capacity to really have our spirit drive our body, because maybe one day we will be driving our heart and voluntarily versus involuntarily beating the way that it has been. And I think that's very worthy of showing and sharing with people how we can do that. Because if that is going to be the change, one of the changes, well, we better get on it. So,
Susan, thank you so much. I can hardly wait for your course. It's what's up for humanity
hmm,
is to think at this depth and at this scope to understand that we're not just walking around as atom mystic beings with no contact with the other side. We're in a cosmic ocean of energies, and how we appreciate that determines to a significant degree how we utilize all these energies for higher consciousness and further human development. That's the essence, I think, of what you're saying.
yeah, and we have, I've been saying this, I think everybody knows this too. We do have a lot of help. We definitely do. And there's
Yeah.
new revelations that are coming, around every corner. And it's a tough process. I don't want to lie and say, oh, this is easy. No, this is grueling.
It
It
takes
can be,
work.
yeah, it takes work. It can be grueling. And there's, once you kind of get through these these upheavals that come in, then you go afterwards, wow, wow, okay, that just allowed more space for this. It allowed more space for that. But we definitely have a lot of help. And I think the only one thing I will share, is I did emailed you and George and said, is it possible if I could do a survey with people that are going to take the course? Because I like to get to know people
Mm,
and know what's going on and have a baseline. So there'll be a questionnaire that is sent out before the course happens, because I'd like to have that engagement in that interaction and have it be a real connective experience.
beautiful. Susan.
Cool.
Susan Manewich, everyone, operating at levels of refinement that is astonishing, I must say. And
That's the
Susan,
job. I got to go back to the creator afterwards, so I better do my job right.
that's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. You're accountable.
I am that's true. That's actually really true.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So thank you
Uh,
so much. Susan will join the after chat. You can join the after chat. You'll see the link in the chat box. You received the link in your Zoom reminder for today. Her course starts in a week or so. We'll send out to everybody the further information about her course because this is the beacon we need to follow now as we go into this next evolutionary inflection moment as we prepare ourselves for the multi-intelligent revolution that is happening as we speak on planet Earth. So, Susan, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate your clarity and wisdom today. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week with another speaker and another dimension of what we're going to be covering at the State of the World Forum and in our ET Studies program. Great stuff, Susan. Great
Thank
stuff.
you so much.